So hi everyone, my name is Fanuel. Very excited to be here and talk to you today about our project, the Journal of Stories in Science. So I'll try to share my screen. Hopefully that comes up on your end. Let me know if it does not. Can you see that? Okay, great. And so I have dual roles. So today, so during the day, I am at Harvard as the Assistant Director of Graduate Studies in the Department of Molecular and Cellular Biology. By night and weekends, I am the co-founder and editor-in-chief of the Journal of Stories in Science, which is one of the projects which I'll be telling you about today in the STEM Advocacy Institute that I founded a while ago as a graduate student and postdoc. And that's a very different story, maybe for another time. If you are curious about that journey, happy to tell you also. The Institute short name is SAI, so I may say SAI throughout, so don't get confused by that. Just to jump right into it, our focus at SAI is really this gap between science and society. So we think of it from thinking about bridges that are connecting these two domains. So whether it's asking new questions to research, building tools, building new types of events, programming. I mean, all these are components that help to increase access between these two domains. And that's really, at SAI, we are focused on that. And all our members are all volunteers who are spending part of their time with us building. I like to say build, experiment, and explore. That's kind of what we are trying to do all the time. And so again, my hat now is SAI, okay? I'll put the Harvard one aside, okay? And so this is our kind of a suite of our programming. We have created events, we have podcasts, people are building YouTube channels, the journal, which I'll tell you about today. We have people who are building programs like the SAI Brain Explorers, Millennial Science, which is a high schooler to college program that one of our members is building, to a STEM studio. We have a journal that's bridging science and art. Check it out, Nature Evolve. Really a lot of really cool content there, to tools like Research Hub that are creating really fascinating tools and so forth. And we spent a lot of time engaging with a lot of organizations. So Paige, actually, we had talked not so long ago through one of our initiatives as well. So it's great that we're connecting here again in this format. So the journals, to jump right into it, this was the first project in the organization that we started back in 2016. And the premise is that science is fundamentally about people. People do it, people are affected by it. And this is what really has been driving us ever since we started it. And the idea is that these people, scientists and others, they experience all these domains: failure, discovery, inspiration, fear, struggle. And these are components that we normally don't talk about. And so we wanted to expose these to be able to have a place, a platform that can allow people to find out very quickly these components, the human components of science that we normally are not discussing so much. So the idea is that there's this power of the unspoken human stories to teach, engage, connect, build bridges of new understanding between science and society. So using stories as the catalyst, if you will. So the journal itself, we publish, of course, and what we hope to do is to study these components. So the database now, and I'll tell you the number very shortly, continues to grow, and we hope over time that'll be just a resource for people. And that's why I think the link with LabXchange has been great, because that is giving exposure to that database. Promoting as well, interesting stories. And I think this component of organization and preservation, hugely important there, that we want to be able to preserve these narratives for future study. So if you look at our website, storiesinscience.org, you'll find this prominent feature of search function. All the stories are heavily tagged to death, so that a user can easily find a wealth of information and dimension to these individual stories. So you can go to our site, a user can find stories, build a library, get recommendation. And so when we were sort of working with LabXchange, these were components that we were curious to see how the platform would integrate. And so it's great to see that now we have these two places where if a user discovers the story in LabXchange, they click to learn more, they can come and discover even more stories on our platform that we continue to grow very, as the time goes by. 170 is the magic number, and it's just been exciting, and we're hoping to break 200 before the end of this year. So it's tough getting these stories. It really is really tough, and I'm happy to tell you more about that process, coming up with creative ideas on how to do that. The structure, mostly female. So this is a alluvial plot, just connecting the dots between all the different stories. Mostly female, US, North America, Europe is next. But you have quite a distribution of people for all these other dimensions here at different places. And we're always trying to diversify the distribution here, because we think narratives, can come from all over the world. Life sciences wins that race, but we keep seeing a diversity of narratives that are coming through as well. I want to tell you about one story that was really amazing that almost broke our site back in 2019. This is a story by Miriam Ally, who talked about studying and experiencing mental illness. As someone who is faculty member studying that, and as someone who's experienced it, and that almost destroyed our site, just to give you that perspective of this story and the particular story to date. We've published books, 2 books so far, 2017 and then more recently 2019, and we're now working to do the next volume of the journal, Journeys in Science that Elsevier published. We hope to continue to do this and make them available as much as we can. We have something called the Stories in Science Lab, which has been super exciting. So we do journal clubs. We have something that calls voice transcription, story annotation, story gamification, and then lastly here, the gallery, which I want to tell you more about. This has been so much fun to do and quite surprising. So part of what we really push is experimentation, try different things. So I put this thing together in terms of how can we get the stories out into the public. So the Cambridge Science Festival was the first opportunity last spring, whereby we printed quotes from the stories into these 18 by 24 boards, foam boards, and just held a room. So in the top left here, and we just had a time window, 3 hours, and people would stroll by and engage with some of the authors and us about their narratives. So almost like a research presentation, poster session, if you will, at a research lab. So since then, it's been quite a journey. So I have gone to the Cambridge Science Festival, New York, UCSF, San Francisco, Brandeis, and then back again, Cambridge Science Festival. But unfortunately, COVID-19 had other plans, so we had to not do that, which is a bummer. But we were super excited about that because this would have been our biggest display at the Cambridge library, and so that was a bummer, but hopefully we can redo this some other future time. The process, I won't get into too much detail here. We really are working with a diverse set of people. There's a team of editors, including myself, that try to solicit stories from individuals. The writing process involved. Sometimes we find a story that's already published, and the key thing is tagging it, make sure it's easily taggable, categorized, and then we're organizing our searchable database so that it can be easily accessible for analysis, social media, curriculum development. So something like LabXchange is using that career development tool. The NIH really wanted it to include career aspects so that people can find these things. So the database is really a huge piece that we are trying to do. And the field is growing. We're not alone in this. I think Paige has some really cool things that she's doing as well. I'm excited to hear about. So we published a paper recently in Cell, Trends in Molecular Medicine, trying to really tell people sort of what our vision is about the field, the growing field, and also who else is doing this awesome work, whether you're a vlogger, programming, podcasting, live shows, the Story Collider is really fantastic at this, a very fantastic organization, and journals, where we are, and really using energy like from BioArchive, which is another kind of our inspiring journal that we're borrowing the thematic elements from there to say, how can the journal now moving forward be this sort of the humanistic element of science that people can connect to, right? If a paper is published and they want to learn more about the human side of it, they can click on a button and go to the story. So that's those are the things we're exploring right now as we go forward. So the hard work continues. LabXchange has been great. Connection. Now we're working with NYU, with Growing Up in Science. Cornell just tapped us recently, and we're working on that. A couple of grants submitted to the ASCB, where we're trying to get more funding to support us, because really it's the energy to get more people to submit. It's really high, and I'm happy to tell you more about that. It's not easy to get that story to the finish line. So thinking about videos, something that we're exploring right now. So really experimenting with different modalities. Happy to take questions. I believe we'll do them afterwards or after Paige, but this is the last slide. If you're interested in connecting with me, email me. I'm on Twitter, Fanuel Muindi, or look at our organization Twitter at STEM Advocacy, and my email is there. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So I'm Paige Jarreau. I'm a longtime science communicator and now director of science communication at Lifeology. It's a health software company, but they're really, they kind of have a very entrepreneurial spirit where little side products can spin off into little different LLCs. And so Lifeology is an example of that that's happened. So Lifeology was started by myself and our designer at Lifeology. And it serves a lot of purposes, but basically it's a platform that brings scientists and artists together. So we're sort of, we are trying to address issues on the public side of bringing people health and science information that's accessible, especially for people with low literacy levels. And then on the side of the scientists, of solving the problem of they often don't know how to do these things. So we're in the healthcare, Lifeology is very embedded in the healthcare space and seeing that problem with patient education where it's has very big consequences. And it's just, doctors just aren't doing the job of very well of trying to educate people who have low literacy on things like genetic mutations and the kind of things they need to know when they have cancer today. But it's also, you know, in other sciences too, of scientists not really knowing where and how to go about communicating to broad audiences. And so Lifeology is, we're a platform and also a service that helps match scientists and artists together to create more accessible content for lay audiences, for people with low literacy, for kids, for students. So courses can be used by anyone. And so we came up with this idea with the designer of, it's not, you know, we're not reinventing the wheel or anything, but we basically are going after flashcards. So like digital flashcards that are illustrated. So breaking science into bite-sized pieces and combining that with custom art created by artists who have a lot of freedom in the creation process to where they can help tell the story of the science so that it's more accessible. So this is an example of a course that we created on how does cancer grow with a scientist and also an illustrator who was a former cancer researcher himself, who did this wonderful kind of very empathetic journey of someone who's going through cancer, sort of shrinking her down and showing her as sort of a superhero in her own body, and how, you know, going through the science of cancer through this storyline. So this is what it looks like, a course. What we call a course is basically a series of flashcards. That's kind of a sequential art where people can swipe through or on the computer click through, and it takes them through a story. Usually there's 30 little cards per what we call a course, but that's variable depending on, you know, they can be used for almost anything. So, you know, we created Lifeology so we could try to help broad audiences be more interested in science, but also not think it's scary, especially in a healthcare setting, so they would find it more approachable and relatable, especially through this art process. And, you know, our ideas are that art and narrative help make that science more understandable, but more personal for people and students, more motivating and personally relevant. But, you know, we think that it's in particular the collaboration between a scientist and an artist and a writer when they get together that they're able to make these higher impact products to communicate science. So at Lifeology, we're not just a consulting service or something that takes, you know, brings scientists' work and turns it into Lifeology courses. We are growing a global network of artists and writers who can sign up on our Lifeology.io community space. And when a scientist comes in who wants to create a Lifeology course or something else, we help pair that scientist with artists and writers, ideally local to their area, that can best communicate to their audiences. So just a little bit of a case study. We did some coronavirus courses. We decided to, why not, in the last few months, we decided to create a series of coronavirus courses, and we also started creating each one, we created like a kids version. So we created this little like kids coronavirus comic that was really popular. So we could adapt the Lifeology format to be just a kind of a comic, just an image or an image with text. And we had fantastic community engagement too that helped us translate this into to 20 different languages. And we started doing some research too, collecting feedback from people who indicated that they really enjoyed this, and it made it easier for them to learn about COVID and its implications. So there's more about this on our site. So if you go to lifeology.io, you can kind of browse around, and we have a blog and community space for scientists and artists. But we talk about a bit about the process of creating these courses, which I think is important to the final product. So the process of creating a course is very collaborative. So it always starts with a scientist or some kind of scientific information. And then the Lifeology team, we can help pair the scientist with an artist and a writer. And then it's a collaborative process of the scientist and the writer kind of working together, turning the content into bite-sized pieces that fill a series of flashcards and hopefully a narrative that goes throughout those cards. And then an artist comes in and starts to develop a storyboard, and then together the team kind of reviews that storyboard, and then it goes to final illustration. And then we also have been having fact checking. So it's almost like a little bit of a mini peer review in these little flashcards. We get scientific experts to review the flashcards, and we put their names and pictures at the end of the flashcard set as reviewers. And so it's kind of nice that, you know, someone going through this sort of gets a little bit of the process of science too, because they see, in the end of each course, they see that there was scientists who reviewed this and made sure it was correct. And so just in terms of how people can get involved, you know, there might be people even here, you know, we're always looking for like partnerships and just to create cool new things that people can get involved as artists and writers. We made the community site at lifeology.io, particularly for that. So we're growing a community of artists and writers who can create these courses and other things. And then also people can create their own courses. So we're actually still very early in the creation of the Lifeology platform. Right now we're working on a dashboard where a scientist or organization could use our dashboard and create their own courses, sort of like a Canva for creating Lifeology courses, where they could come in and, you know, not talk to us and create their own stuff and connect with artists to do that. But right now it's still a manual process. So the Lifeology team is creating the courses for people. But anyone can create their own course with us. And then we're also exploring things like, you know, scientific organizations sponsoring courses. And, you know, as Lifeomic is very much a data-driven healthcare company. So we collect all the analytics on the back end, and we do a lot to make it very robust for an institution to be able to use this and to be able to monitor, to evaluate what kind of impacts they're having. Yeah, and so we've done some, just like a quick aside, I'll show you the site where we're bringing together a blog, and we have about 400 members so far who are coming together to create things, including courses. But one just fun thing is we recently launched a Women in STEAM card deck. So it's not necessarily a course, but it's a card deck that features different women in STEAM that people can nominate. And we illustrate them and tell kind of fun facts about, you know, the women in STEM. So where this is going to be sort of a living course that grows over time with new women who inspire us. So just an example of like, a course doesn't necessarily have to be a course. It could be almost anything that can exist in this like digital interactive flashcard format.
Thank you, Paige, so much for sharing your work. One of the, I think, exciting, common strands through both of these presentations for me is just how you, both through your organizations and really this extends to everyone here, you just really empower people to tell their stories in a way that makes sense for them, and also to understand the stories of others and the work that they're doing and what inspires them. So I love talking to science communicators and looking at all the diverse ways that they encourage people to engage with the broader scientific community and really just increase access to that community for everyone.